Hello, hello everyone. How are you? I hope you're all doing quite well. I have to be a little bit quiet because some people are already going to sleep. Some people had a pretty busy day, so uh, I don't want to bother them, I suppose. And that would be quite rude of me, I think. But I've been pretty good. My shoulder and neck is starting to feel a little bit better, so that's good, thankfully. I would have started like a minute earlier, but the ads decided not to just play 3 minutes at once and decided to play 1 minute for like a minute, and then play 2 minutes a minute later. After that first ad ended, which was kind of silly, but sometimes you just have to make do. But you might be noticing that I'm a little bit, a little bit brighter, and I just thought that it would be nice to add a little bit more color, so I just increased the saturation a little bit. Uh, used a bit more of my Tuahade power to form further on this material world. Hello, welcome in, clever, welcome in. I hope you're well. Hope you've been good. It was kind of a busy day for me. Excuse me. Just what I had to be up quite early for for stuff, and then I was doing more things even after I kind of finished up my work. I had various things to be doing, but I I I accidentally started stream a little while ago. So if anyone here got a notification that I was live, I do apologize. I meant to uh I meant to just click start recording and then do I was practicing my singing. I was kind of just seeing how I sounded like on the microphone to see if it sounded okay. Because I don't have any of those fancy schmancy uh any of those fancy schmancy filters or like echo stuff. What is it called? Reverb, I think. Welcome in, D. Welcome in. Ah, it's lovely to see you. Oh, it's such a cute. I love the cute emote of it's the wave, but then there's also the little heart. That's a nice one. I haven't seen one like that before. I've kind of seen similar ones. Your colors are very vibrant today. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I decided to manifest a little more strongly and bring some colors in. It's your friend's emote. Ooh, what's their name? What's their name? Nyan Latte. I assume they're a cat of some kind. So I'm going to open up their channel and I will check them out later. I'll follow them. There you go. She's a demon. Ooh, you guys are all you're all. Well, I guess she's a friend of your demons. Are you clever? Are you posting? Wait, what? What? My brain's confused. Demon. I need to do my stream reps. I'm sorry, D. I need to do my reps and watch some streams. You could be a fallen angel though. I need to actually get away. Okay. I what? Okay, apparently I wasn't followed to you. That's weird. I was wondering why I never see you live. Apparently I wasn't I'm so sorry. Okay, well, that's fixed now. I am now following. I'm annoyed about that. I apologize. Um I'm going to do my be a good follower now and watch one of your streams. I'm dumb. I apologize, D. D. No, 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 no. You always come to my streams. I wanna check you out too, and following someone is the best way to know when they're live. Obviously, uh, if you want to reverb, there's a nice free plug. Ooh, I will take that because like reverb, what it helps do is it helps hide how off you are. If you're only a little bit off key, reverb will like hide it a little bit and kind of gives you a little bit of room for error. But yeah, I started up a stream by accident, and I sang just kind of like a practice song a cappella. Uh, no backing track, but I just kind of sang along to uh, to Never Too Much by Luther Vandross. Knocked down a couple of keys to uh, to be able to sing it myself. But I didn't even realize until after I ended the sudden stream. I was like looking around for my I was looking around for the video on my like where I have the VOD saved and I couldn't find it. I was like, where is it? I'm so confused. And then I was looking around. Probably about 5 minutes later, I was like, "Oh, did I remember to publish my last stream?" And I had, but I was like, I can't remember if I did. I'll find that recording later. And I clicked in and I looked at the latest unpublished VOD. I realized it was 2 minutes, a little bit over 2 minutes long, and I was sitting there being like, "Oh no." And I'm just hoping no one. I don't think anyone caught me because no one said anything. So it was a little bit embarrassing. And welcome in, Teal. Welcome in. Again, nice and cozy. Uh, the that void emote you posted, clever of the smushed face. I like to think that that's you guys. After I posted the that image on Twitter, the cutesy one, the one that's going around where people are showing off their face being squished, or not their face being squished, but the VTuber squishing their face. Hang on, I should have it. I really love things like that that are really sweet and wholesome. The person who made that was like they had such a good idea. And I've been seeing a lot of really cute versions of like all of my friends and Niji Sanji, people that I enjoy. Here it is. I did this. I think it's cute. I think the red of the scarf and the gloves kind of goes with the red head. Yeah, the cute winter one exactly, Teal, exactly. Hang on, I'll make it a little bigger. Come here. But there's some really nice ones. I really loved my friend. Hello, Haru. Welcome in, welcome in. Hang on, wait. Drown check, thank you. It's so cute, it's so cute. Although, why I'm wearing like a belt. Ooh, thank you. Thank you, D. Hang on. Wait. Thank you for the drown check, Haru. Wait, I'm moving myself. I want to move the thing. What did I call it again? Oh yeah, Ruo warms you up. That's what I call it. Anyway, but thank you very much, Deal. I'll play around with that and figure out how it works and see how it sounds on with my voice. Hopefully, it sounds good. But yeah, I love things like that. You see them pop around every now and again. You often see things like that pop around with the with Pokey Day and stuff, where like the VTuber will hold the Pokey in their mouth and it'll be like, "Come play it with me, play the Pokey game," or other random things. Some of them are a little bit more explicit than I would be comfortable posting. Some of them involve things like leashes and collars, and I'm like, relax, guys. But it's okay. Some people are a little bit braver than me when it comes to those type of things. Maybe another time. Maybe someday I would do something. I'd drop it on you guys and Maybe try and scare you. Also, by the way, speaking of things to drop on you, I think I almost have my server set up. I just want to. I might ask like Haru. I might ask you or like someone else to just. I'll just send, or maybe Teal as well, or someone, and be like, hey, can you guys just make sure that everything is working here? I also, the maid. um, I also made sure to LARP a little bit. A lot of the roles are silly. A lot of the roles are like Irish based hierarchy, medieval like hierarchical terms. So you have me as the Kianair, meaning like leader, commander, in character. Exactly, exactly. You have the Brehon, the mods, the Brehon law being the old Irish law. The Brehons were the jurists essentially. Then you have things like uh, followers, or at least people who join uh, who aren't. Hang on, let me pull up Discord so I make sure that I remember where to put the emphasis. But people who aren't like subscribers, I was going to call them botach, which is like the term for like essentially peasants, like people who just worked the land under people. But I felt like that might be a little bit mean, so instead I called them the boera, which technically they're like wealthy cattle owners, like wealthy freemen. I might drop that down to like that is a little mean. I think it's a little mean too. I was like, wait a minute, hang on, people might not like that. That's a little insulting. So I'll call them boera, and that's like that's a little bit better. Bo in this instance meaning cows, and then era is like not not king necessarily. I was thinking that, but there's a couple of other better terms. So I was thinking perhaps I think everyone is called Nafiana. So you're all part of my Fian band, and then we have things like the Flia and those who would be artists and stuff. I believe I believe would be placed there. If there's any like particular people who are just like who are my art friends, and then you have things like the Philly being a reference to poets, and typically these poets were held in very high regard. So there'll be different little terms for different things, but I don't know. I had a little fun. I'll probably mess around with it a little bit more to make it not be mean. Changing higher depending on length of being subbed. I was looking the bot that I used, or not the bot. Was it the bot? No, like the Twitch integration gave me like Twitch subscriber, and then like the different tiers of subscription, which like you guys like literally, there's no reason to subscribe to me right now. There's so little you guys get other than like no ads and like one emote made by our dear friend Haru. But yeah, I'll probably send it off to someone and be like, hey, can you guys just make sure that that's correct? What do you mean? This is amazing. I just it is. I love it. I feel like I'm drooling in that image. It's like when I listen to ASMR. But how have you guys been? I'm slowly getting better. It's been a little bit frustrating the past week not being able to work out. Drooling for the artist. They've made me sit in one place for too long that I fell asleep with my eyes open, and now I'm drooling. Uh, but it's been a little bit frustrating that I haven't been able to go to the gym or anything or run. But I think soon enough I'll be able to get back to it. At least probably by the middle of next week, I imagine. So that's going well for me. What about you guys? Are you guys having a good Friday? I mean, it's the weekend now, so everything is cool. We all get to chill out, and we're coming closer to Christmas. I love Christmas, and I'm planning on doing. Okay, you know what? You know what? Rather than saying I'm planning, I'm just gonna say it right now. I'm gonna do the singing stream next weekend. Okay, that's just it's happening next. Wait, let me see what next weekend is to make sure I'm not actually gonna have like a clash with something. Um, yeah. Okay, so either the day of the 16th or the 17th, or maybe the 15th, but I'll probably be a little tired. I'll just do it. I'll just do it. I decided if I put a date down, I now have to do it. And if I don't do it, then you guys can bully me. I give you permission to call me a baby, to call me a scaredy cat, to call me mean words, okay? So if I don't do it, you guys can do that. I'll just decide. I'll decide what day of the weekend it is on, and I'll also spend a little bit of time to get it like set up. I don't know what I'll do. I might try and find like a cheap Christmas background, or I'll just do like a really simple setup. Uh maybe I could wear that thing that person made. I might they're probably so they seemed really popular, so I imagine if I tried to message them and be like, "Hi, can I wear your thing for a stream?" They might be like, "No." um Although then again, it has the hands, so that might be a little awkward. I just constantly be reaching out to grab you guys. That would be silly. But I'll try and find something Christmassy. Maybe just like a simple Christmas hat to wear. But yeah, yeah. I think I'll do I have a couple songs in mind, and I might do like some I'll do some of the typical Christmas songs. Then we'll do a few Irish Rover, cute Xmas blanket assets. Yes, 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 yes. That seems good. That seems like a great idea. I might have to. No, I just thinking if I'm constantly bouncing, but the acid isn't stuck on, I'm gonna have to learn how to do stuff like that, like stick an acid onto me. But I'll bring in some like Irish trad renditions of Irish or of Christmas songs, because there's a couple of good ones, like Good King Wenceslas, who was I believe a Hungarian king or one of those anyway, one of in that region. But it's a pretty good fun song. It's like Good King Wenceslas looked out on the feast of Stephen, where the snow lay round about, deep and crisp and even. But it's a little bit faster and a little bit funner. Um, and then I'll probably just do like a bunch of random songs. But yes, I have decided, and by decided I mean I just declared it um, without actually thinking about it a couple of minutes ago. So it is now official. I can't back out. So yeah, look forward to that. I have to. I have to. Oh yeah, yeah. That's actually way easier. That's much more simpler. Teal. Yeah. I probably would have done. I probably would have realized I could do that the moment I go to grab the PNG, but it just didn't. It didn't come to me. A moment. Hang on. Hang on. For that teal, you get your face smushed. Thank you, teal. You immediately pointed out something. The easiest way to do something. There you go. Okay. Okay. But yeah, yeah. I think I'm looking forward to it because I don't know. Listening to VTubers sing is fun, isn't it? Don't be expecting like Ariana Grande or like any other incredible singer. Okay. You can. Oh, you got. I'm yawning so much. I feel like, especially like the more I don't want to yawn, the more I'm going to yawn. So maybe if I Ruadiana Grande. Wait, Rihanna. I could be Ruana. Wait, that actually just sounds like a name. Ruana. Get him a pillow. I can. I'll put it up against you guys' shoulder, and I'll sleep on you. I'll sleep on your shoulder. Have you guys ever done that? Like, I remember I went on a few like school trips, and you'd usually be sitting next to your friend. I remember one time I bundled up my coat, and I was absolutely shattered. I didn't sleep at all that day, like leading up to the trip, and it was a really big one, so I was super excited. But I was so tired on like this really long bus trip we had to go on, so he let me put my coat like on his shoulder and fall asleep. It was so very kind of him. Why I should have probably just yeah, I've fallen asleep on people and they've fallen asleep on me, but I try not to because sometimes I drool when I eat. I have I I have sometimes drooled. Uh, I have sometimes drooled in my sleep, but usually it's like when I'm like just lying on a bed and like lying on my side typically. Uh, it's kind of icky, isn't it? It's icky. But most of the time I don't seem to. I'm going to eat chicken Alfredo and then try some other games like that. Nice, nice, clever. Enjoy that. One dude fell asleep on my shoulder on the bus and he drooled all down your shirt. Oh no, Teal. Ew, ew. See, that's why like I would always put something on. Ugh, ugh. That's why I would always put something on like their shoulder to sleep on, so that like that wouldn't happen. So like it could just be like even if you pulled up your hood or something. I knew. Oh, you were dating him. Oh, I mean that's still kind of icky. I feel like that would. I'm gonna push a stranger off. I uh, I remember seeing videos like that, like people would do like little pranks and stuff like that, where they'd be like just sleeping on the train and they just slowly fall onto the shoulder of the other person, and they'd see what would happen. Would they immediately push them off? Would they just kind of uncomfortably accept it? Which, I feel like if you're doing something like that, if they, you should probably have something in your ear telling you how the other person is feeling. Like if it's because obviously if that happens, you're gonna be a little bit uncomfortable like the moment it happens. But a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but some people you see in those types of videos, they kind of just like look at them and be like, okay, like they kind of just shrug their shoulders at it. Um, and then others clearly are like, I don't like this, but I'm too scared to stop this. And like I'm like, okay, you should stop. And usually the few that I have seen, usually they come up pretty quickly. But I'd be like, you should have some way of saying of someone just watching and making sure you're not making things too awkward for them. I move around a lot, so they'd wake up. I can just imagine like you just shrug your shoulder and they fall right off the chair, and they like, or even worse, uh, or better, depending. I mean, if it's like your boyfriend Teal, and you like shrug him off your shoulder because he's drooling all over you, and then he like falls on like kind of slides down your chest and onto your lap, and then he's like nice and cozy, nice and comfy. Lap, sleeping on someone's lap is so nice. When you have someone playing with your hair too. Oh, that's so nice. It's so good. It's the best. It's the best. And then he would have drooled on my lap. That's when you hit him. that's when you punch him and tell him to stop drooling. But I might, but I might get into the book for today. Let me just. Okay. Take a sip of water. But yeah, I think it's time to get into it. And good advice, but it's years outdated. Don't worry, you'll definitely find. Well, no, yeah, you'll. I don't know if you're searching for one or not. I won't say if you will or will not find someone soon. If you are searching for someone, you totally will. And if you're like, meh, you know, whatever comes around. Where were we? Oh yes. So last chapter we were looking at consciousness, and we were looking at different ways different philosophers kind of considered consciousness, and we spent a lot of time on Russell, Bertrand Russell. Okay, I hope I don't keep yawning. Uh, and he sort of gave us a third alternative between Descartes, Cartesian dualism and materialism, being his neutral monism. You have a girlfriend now, but they're in Germany. Oh, that's so cute. That's so cute. I hope you guys get to see each other soon. Uh, and he developed this sort of idea that qualia were the things, the most fundamental, uh, the most fundamental aspect of reality, the things that material and mental are ultimately made upon or based upon. Those things only exist if they have some sort of qualia in them. And there was some seemingly advantages to this, but we saw that there was also some issues with this conception, such as the idea that if qualia is seemingly in everything, how is it possible? Does that mean that things like rocks or logs or the fire blazing behind me, nice and warm and cozy, is that somehow conscious? Because it must have some kind of qualia for the material things to be in it. And two, how does more complex forms of consciousness come about through these proto-consciousness or proto-qualia sort of atoms or materials, the singular material? And this led us into the discussion of the binding problem, which seems to be one that affects both the materialist and a couple of other things that kind of suggest that our conscious experience is a thing made up of multiple different aspects, different things. And that is the unity of consciousness, the fact that we seem to experience things from a singular point of view, a unified perspective of consciousness, would suggest that it can't be that we have thousands of, or millions, or trillions of little consciousnesses just forming up. There seems to be an issue with this conception for Russell. How is it possible for these multiple consciousnesses to have a singular experience like we do? And for the materialist, if the firing of neurons and synapses and brain activity and brain states are the mind, and that is consciousness, why do we experience things in a unified, singularly way, or singular way? Why, when we hear the sounds that we hear and the colors that we see, why is it ordered in the way it is, and why is it not just a stream of seemingly random noises with no real connection? It seems like it's ordered and is unified. And Fester ultimately pointed us in a direction that we have to really consider thought at this point, what it is to be thinking. And this is what this chapter is going to be looking at. So chapter 6, Thought. In hitting upon the formulation, I think, therefore I am, Descartes took himself to have established not only his existence, but his nature. He is essentially a thing that thinks, or thinks. Remember, guys, I'm Irish, so sometimes I do not pronounce the th in my words. Uh, I just have a best friend to stayed away, but I'll see her in a week. Ooh, nice in a week. Nice, clever. Have a wonderful time. It's always nice seeing like close friends again, especially when it's been a while since you've last seen them. But then you see each other and you immediately fall back into the way things always are. Thought, that is to say, is the essence of the mind. There are two aspects of thought that are of particular philosophical interest: its representation of things beyond itself, that is, its intentionality, and its movement from one representation to another in accordance with laws of logic, that is, its rationality. But as indicated in the previous chapter, contemporary philosophers of mind typically take the problems of qualia and consciousness to pose the most serious problems to the materialist concept of the mind, with intentionality and rationality being more readily explicable in naturalistic terms. There is a certain irony in this view, insofar as it effectively takes sensation and feeling, capacities we seem to share with other, obviously material animals, to be more mysterious than thought, which we arguably do not share with them. One would have thought it more natural to see things the other way around. Indeed, most philosophers of the past have seen things the other way around. The suggestion that what we share with the beasts is scientifically puzzling, while what appears to be unique to us is merely one relatively unproblematic material capacity among others, would have struck Plato and Aristotle, Augustine and Aquinas, Descartes, Leibniz, and Kant as odd, even perverse. So he might reference this later on, but one of Aristotle's Aristotle defined man as a rational animal. So essentially, what that's kind of the point Fezer is making. For the people of the past, the man is defined by his rationality. That seems to be something, and that seems to be an aspect of him that separates, that qualifies him from the rest of the animal natures. So the idea then that it's just our qualia, that we feel things, is scientifically unexplicable, while supposedly a rationality that we don't share with other animals is easily scientifically explicable, is an odd one, at least from Fezer's point of view and from philosophers of the past. We also saw in the previous chapter that there is a strain in contemporary thinking that holds qualia and consciousness ultimately to be explicable in terms of intentionality, and it was suggested that a strong case could be made for this view. But insofar as the same strain typically takes the task of explaining intentionality itself in materialistic terms to be little more than a comparatively trivial mop-up operation, it is arguably misguided. As we shall see, a number of contemporary philosophers hold that the older philosophical traditions were correct, and that there are considerable difficulties involved in carrying out a naturalistic explanation of thought. In this chapter and the next, we will examine recent attempts at such an explanation. This chapter will focus on attempts to account for rationality in particular, and we will see that as with our investigation of qualia and consciousness, the investigation of rationality leads us inexorably, inexorably to intentionality. Chapter 7, then, will deal, at last, with that most ubiquitous of mental phenomena. Reasons and causes. Suppose you witness Ethel crying out in pain after stubbing her toe, and then watch as she removes her shoe and examines her foot. If asked to explain the first event, you would probably say something to the effect that the damage to her body resulted in her crying out. If asked to explain the second, you would say that she wanted to determine the extent of the damage, and thought that removing her shoe would be the best way to do so. In the first case, you would be pinpointing the causes of her behavior. In the second, you would be giving the reasons for it. In both cases, you are giving an explanation of human behavior, but the sort of explanation is very different in each. In the first, you are appealing to brute physical forces, an impact on the skin and muscle tissues, together with the stimulation of nerve endings, while in the second, you are appealing to what a person takes to be a rational course of action, given her or his beliefs and desires. This distinction between reasons for and causes of behavior is a crucial one, and raises in a vivid way the question of how human beings fit into the natural world. The role of causes seems unproblematic. The human body is, after all, a material system alongside other ones, and it is, as much as they are, governed by the causal regularities enshrined in the laws of physics. So it is not surprising that much of human behavior should be explicable in causal terms. But what about behavior that seems to involve more than this? What about behavior that results from choice? After reflection about which course of what about behavior that results from choice? After reflection about which course of action would be best? To understand such behavior, it seems insufficient to speak in terms of ordinary causal factors, the stimulation of nerve endings, the secretion of chemicals, the firing of neurons, and the like. Reasons for the action taken are relevant also, and appear to be just sorts of things that and appear to be just different sorts of things from causal factors. To say that neural processes cause the muscles in my fingers to move as I type these sentences is true enough. But my desire to write these sentences, my belief that using a word processor would be the most efficient way of doing so, and my consequent decision to start typing are clearly just as important, and seem irreducible to the sorts of causal processes alluded to. For A to be the cause of B is one sort of relation. For A to be a reason for B is another. The first concerns the impersonal realm of meaningless material forces. The latter concerns the personal sphere of rational deliberation. It's a straightforward case of comparing apples and oranges. The trouble is that giving a naturalistic or materialistic explanation of any phenomenon seems somehow to require the fitting it into the causal network described by physical science. If the materialist picture of the world is correct, there can be no true explanation of human behavior that does not ultimately amount to a causal explanation. But are the reasons one has for an action really analyzable in terms of causes of that action, appearances notwithstanding? Welcome in, Kankuro. Why are you oggying me? I love that Ketaro emote. It's very cute. Rualore. Ooh. Oh no. What's some Rualore? What can I drop? Oh, Cancro. I've decided. I declared that can be your Rualore. I declared earlier today, during the stream, that I will be doing a singing stream next weekend. Not this weekend, but next weekend. I kind of did it on instinct, and now I have to do it. Otherwise, people can bully me. But I guess some lore would be that some of my favorite weaponry would involve a long sword as well as the spear, and the dagger is quite important. The Irish ring swords were a little bit heavier. The pommel wasn't as heavy in them, so that they were more blade heavy, which would make them better for cutting as well as give a nice weight when you're kind of bonking someone with it, or thrusting as well. Although thrusting was a little bit awkward with the heavier blade. But I hope you're well, Kankuro. Welcome in. We're just having a read. Nice cozy. I had kind of a busy day today, so I'm taking it nice and easy. I think I might do like a game today or tomorrow. Where were we? Oh, If the materialist picture of the world is correct, there can be no true explanation of human behavior that does not ultimately amount to a causal explanation. But there are reasons one has for an action. But are the reasons one have for an action really analyzable in terms of causes of that action, appearances notwithstanding? Many philosophers have thought so. They would argue that since the action of my typing these sentences was the result of the reason for action constituted by my beliefs and desires, there is a clear sense in which it was caused by that reason for action. Reasons are, on this view, just a species of causes. But other philosophers have following Ludwig Wittgenstein, argued that in many cases it is simply a conceptual confusion to treat reasons as causes of action. The smile with which I greet you is, in this view, not caused by the happiness I feel at your return from a long trip, even if the happiness was a reason for my smile. Rather, the smile partially constitutes the happiness. The behavior and happiness are not two neatly distinguishable elements related, like events as described in physical science by some causal law. The tie between them is an intrinsic conceptual one. Hmm. Okay. Let me just have a quick read of that again. In many cases, the smile which I greet you is, in this view, not caused by the happiness I feel at your return from a long trip, even if the cause was the reason for my smile. Rather, the smile partially constitutes the happiness. Okay. What we want to focus on, however, is not the question of whether this or that isolated reason for an action might plausibly be said to be the cause of the action, but instead on the larger question of whether the vast network of beliefs, desires, thoughts, and other propositional attitudes as a whole, which largely constitute the mind, can plausibly be explained in terms of the network of causal processes that constitute the brain. We noted in Chapter 3 that the elements of the first network are related by logical connections, whereas the elements of the latter are causally related. When one set of neural processes bring about another, that is at most an instant of a contingent causal regularity. Or this is at most an instance of a contingent causal regularity. But when the thought that all men are mortal and Socrates is a man brings about the thought that Socrates is mortal, this is a case of logical inference, where the second thought follows of necessity. So what he's saying here is, if, in the brain, which is physical processes, and are related a kind of true contingent causal regularity, the firing of one synapse or process doesn't necessarily entail the firing of the next. That next one might not even exist in the first place, or it just simply might not fire. But if I was to think the thought, all puppets, all puppets are cute, Kankuro King is a puppet, well, that's a separate thought. Then, by necessity, I would have to say that Kankuro King is cute. Puppets are cool. They can be cool and cute. But Professor is essentially arguing that there's a conceptual difference between these things. Sasseries, though, I don't know what a sassery is. Hang on, let me very quickly look that up. It might be something that I do know, but I just don't recognize the term. Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about something particular as like some kind of type of puppet. I didn't realize you were probably talking about the sassery. The yes, I understand. Sometimes it takes a moment for me to remember. Sasseries, though, are hot. Some puppets can be make you sweat a little. I'm always on my Naruto shit. Nice, clever. I never got big into it. I watched a few episodes, but I never got deep into it. How can the wholly contingent tendency of certain neural processes to trigger certain other ones account for our ability to think in accordance with the utterly inflexible laws of logic? The computation representational theory of thought. Isn't the protag of Lies of P Pinocchio? I haven't played Lies of P, but I know Kankro has, so he can maybe fill us in if he is Pinocchio or maybe some kind of puppet as well. The answer, in the view of many contemporary philosophers of mind, lies in the digital computer. Oh, we should get on the clunk. We saw in chapter 3 that one way of expanding on the generic functionalist idea that mental states are definable in terms of their characteristic causes and effects is to think of those causes and effects as the inputs, outputs, and transitional states of a computer program. The mind in this view is literally a complex piece of computer software implemented on the hardware of the brain. The modern theory of computation owes much to the mathematician Alan Turing, 1912 to 1954, or Turing, whose concept of a universal Turing machine, an abstract specification of a mechanical device capable of implementing any algorithm, was a model for the modern computer. The view in question is thus sometimes called the Turing machine functionalism. The beauty of an algorithm is that it provides a way of carrying out a highly complex task, including such tasks as performing a difficult mathematical computation or reasoning through a series or a long chain of arguments to a conclusion in a simple series of steps. Or a series of simple steps, I should say. The steps can, in fact, be so simple that we often speak of carrying them out mechanically. And what a computer does is essentially to mimic, in this mechanical way, what we do when we follow an algorithm. Your pocket calculator or computer perform a number of elementary operations, realized in nothing more than the sending of electrical signals, which collectively add up to something significant. The display of 4 following upon the inputs of 2 plus 2 and equals, or the generation of text following upon the pressing of keys on a keyboard. Since the elementary operations are so extremely simple, it is possible to construct a machine which is capable of performing them with a very high degree of reliability. And this means that it is possible to construct a purely mathematical system whose operations is parallel exactly to the laws of logic. A suitably programmed computer can be depended upon always to display 4, following the inputs 2 plus 2 and equals, and always to generate Socrates is mortal, following the inputs all men are mortal and Socrates is a man. Man knows his puppets. Well, he's a vibrant red-headed boy, so Clever's imagining me as a puppet right now. Puppet Ruadh. I could have like strings attached, and you could like control me. If I ever wanna become a puppet, I can get on to Mr. Cancro. I'm sure he'll do some puppet magic stuff. I'll become one. Or maybe he'll send me off to who did your model again? Cancro. Was it Labata Bunny? Am I right in thinking that? Who knows what Haru would do? I wonder what Haru would do if I was probably just like throw me around, spin me around on the because I feel like if I had like some of my friends and I had them like attached to like one of those cross-section puppet things, I'd probably just like spin them around and just mess with them. Would I be like a Toy Story? Lobotomy Bunny, yeah. I think that's who did Kankaro's model. Because Kankaro has a if you guys haven't, hang on, let me Let me do this real quick. Cancro King channel. That should. There we go. He was playing Elden Ring based. Gankero's a cool guy. My friend, my good friend, is friends with her. Ooh, nice one, nice one. I know she's done a couple of models of some people that I kind of hang around with. If an artificial device can do this, why not a brain? Why can't we suppose that neural processes are as capable of implementing algorithms as our computers? Indeed, perhaps this is exactly what human thought, including the most abstract and rigorous mathematical and logical reasoning, really is. The implementation of a set of algorithms constituting a program. And if so, the way would be opened to fitting the spheres of reason for action, and reasoning in general into the sphere of physical causation. Just as the implementation of a computer program is ultimately reducible to the network of causes and effects instantiated in a piece of computer hardware, so too would the implementation of the program, that is the human mind, be reducible to the network of neuronal firing patterns constituting the brain. The capacity of the brain, considered as a purely material system, governed by the same laws of physics that govern everything else in the universe, to generate patterns of thought that correspond to the laws of logic, would be no more mysterious in principle than the capacity of a calculator reliably to function in accordance with the laws of arithmetic. Ooh, he's a Frankenstyle. Definitely her style. I do like, you can see like the stitching. You can see the stitching on Cancro. It's very nice. In the computer, there are identifiable symbols. Numerals like 2 and 4 and the signs plus and equals, and so forth, that correlate with the numbers and functions of a mathematical computation. Is there anything analogous in the case of the computer? That is, the brain. Many philosophers have argued that there is, in the form of sentences. In their view, a particular mental state, such as the belief that Socrates is a man, is to be understood as a relation between the person having the belief and a sentence that has the meaning that Socrates is a man. Where is this sentence, though? Surely it can't be in the brain itself. There is nothing in the brain that looks like a sentence. Socrates is a man. And what language is the sentence written in? Surely not English, since a lot of people who do not speak English have the belief that Socrates is a man. It is mistaken, however, to suppose that a sentence having the meaning that Socrates is a man has to look like the sentence Socrates is a man. After all, the sentence, you guys are going to be hearing Socrates is a man a lot, I apologize. After all, the sentence Socrates is a man could be handwritten instead of typed on paper, and remain the same sentence despite the difference in appearance. Moreover, the sentence could be spoken, existing only as sound waves rather than as splotches on ink on paper. If spoken into a tape recorder, it would exist on a pattern of recording tape. So why couldn't it exist as a neuronal firing pattern in the brain? Why couldn't there literally be sentences in the head, as some theorists have put it? If there are such sentences, they would indeed not plausibly be sentences of English, or Spanish, Chinese, German, or any other natural language, but they could well be sentences of some other universal language, a language of thought, common to all human beings, one we all think in unconsciously, and the sentences of which get manifested in our conscious thinking, speaking, and writing as translations, as it were, into sentences of English. Ooh. Okay, all good. Wrong. He was a reptilian. Oh my god. Socrates was a reptile. Was a lizard man all this time. It's so over. The Illuminati. He was a member of the Illuminati. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. 3 of them. 3. There just so happened to be 3 major philosophers of Greece. Do you guys know what else has 3 sides? You're damn right. Anyway. Philosophers who take the view that there is such a language of thought often refer to it as mentalese. And since the overall theory of which the Mendeleev hypothesis is a part, is one that takes thought to be computation of a sort analogous to this computation, or to the computation performed by modern digital computers, where this computation involves transitions between states directed onto, oh god, sentential representations in a language of thought. The theory is often referred to as the computational or representational theory of thought, or CRTT. So let me read that again because I kind of stumbled on it. Philosophers who take the view that there is such a language of thought often refer to it as Mendeleev, since the overall theory of which Mendeleev's hypothesis is a part of is one that takes thought to be the computation of a sort analogous to the computation performed by modern digital computers, where this computation involves transitions between states directed onto sentential representations in a language of thought. So it moves from this mentalese onto a representation within the language that we understand consciously, either English or German or what have you. The theory is often referred to as the computational representational theory of thought, or CRTT. In the words of Jerry Fodor, the theory's best known advocate, its defenders claim that whatever else one thinks of this theory, it shows that there is, in principle, no problem in explaining our capacity for rational thought in purely materialistic terms. Then we move on to malware bytes. I don't want to renew anything. Please go away. The argument from reason. There are, however, a number of serious objections to this proposal. Consider first the implication of taking mental states to be states of a computer program whose causal efficacy derive entirely from their implementation in electromechanical processes in the brain. When you type 2 plus 2 and equals on the keyboard of an electronic calculator, various signals are sent through the device which ultimately cause the symbol 4 to appear on the display screen. But that symbol signifies to us the number 4, and that the other symbols signify the number 2 and the function of addition and the relation of being equal, plays no role whatsoever in the causal process. If we decide to change the meaning of these symbols, for instance, by using the sequence 2 plus 2 equals to mean please display the message that it is raining, and the symbol 4 to mean it is raining, this would have no effect on how the device operates. Nor would it have any effect if we all forgot the meaning of the symbols and came to regard calculators merely as toys that display different shapes whenever one pressed their keys. The meaning of the symbols are, in short, completely irrelevant to the causal efficacy, for they would have the same causal properties, whatever meaning they had, or even if they had no meaning at all. I love that what he said there about toys to play with. It reminds me of that scene from Amazing World of Gumball, where they parody Let's Players and game reviewers with Richard Watterson playing Computator, and he gets the new high score. Oh, it's so good. Amazing World of Gumball is probably one of my favorite cartoons of like kind of that era, alongside, you got Regular Show, Adventure Time, and Gravity Falls. I feel like I don't know if I'm wrong on this. I feel like Gravity Falls came slightly before those. Going further back, of course, you have things like Ed, Edd n Eddy. You have Misadventures of Flapjack. The Misadventures of Flapjack. Oh, it's so good. I love the intro to that song, to that show, actually. Is so good, and I know the original version, Big Rock Candy Mountain. I don't know it, but I listened to it a good bit by the original singer. He has some really, really great songs. that I might do like I might do covers of sometime. Well, not covers, but like I might sing them in a karaoke. I think it would be fun. Uh, oh, how does that one start again? How does Big Rock Candy Mountain start? Uh, oh no, I need to know now. Sorry, apologies. I'm pausing. I am pausing the reading stream. Candy Mountain. Harry McClintock. That was his name. Harry McClintock. Where were we? One evening as the sun went down and the jungle fire was burning, down the track came a hobo hiking, and he said, "Boys, I'm not turning. I'm headed for a land that's far away, besides the crystal fountains. So come with me, we'll go and see the big rock candy mountains. In the big rock candy mountains, there's a land that's fair and bright, where the hands outgrow on bushes, and you sleep out every night." Ah, it's a fun one. I think my favorite of his songs. Sorry, my voice is a little dry. Actually, I need some water. I won't do this full song. I'll do it maybe because I have no idea what the key is. I kind of forget it. And I was pitching, or what's it called again? I was cracking a little. I was a little bit pitchy. Pitchy was the word I was looking for. Um, but I love his song "Ain't We Crazy." It's very silly. Ain't we crazy? Ain't we crazy? That would have been in Bagpuss. I don't know what that is. Bagpuss. I've never heard of that. But they changed it around a little bit to fit the misadventures of Flapjack, and it fits so well. They replaced it with like the characters' names, Knuckles and, well, Flapjack, an old TV show. Ah, I see, Teal. That's a funny name, Bagpuss. He's showing your age, Teal. Old man or old woman. I actually don't know. You don't have to reveal whichever you are. um, because I don't think, yeah, I think I prefer having like a vague, people are just chat to me. But yeah, he has some really really great songs. Oh, oh God, I hit my mic. I hope that wasn't too loud. I'm not old. I'm barely adult. I was just showing old stuff as a kid. Ah, okay. I see. Um, I oh, there's a lot of old TV shows. Like I remember stuff like Keenan and Kel and Hey Arnold. I mean, they're not that old, but they're definitely. I remember there was one show that I always kind of like. I always found weird, and it's not even like Courage the Cowardly Dog or like any of the really weird Nickelodeon shows, but like, that Rocco's Modern Life. That was just a depressing show. I don't know if anyone ever watched that, but whenever I watched it, it just felt really weird. Even as a kid, I'd love to go back and watch it sometimes and be like, what was that show actually about? I feel like there was so much that I just didn't know. And then you'd have oh god, what was it called? Cow and Chicken, alongside yeah, there was that devil guy in Cow and Chicken. What are we? There was some weird Cartoon Network shows. I never knew Rocco was a kangaroo until a couple of years ago. I feel like I can't remember when I found that out. I never heard of that one. I don't know. Rocco's Modern Life or Cow and Chicken. Cow and Chicken was about a pair of a, a brother and sister who were a cow and chicken, and their parents were humans, and they got into wacky hijinks. The cow was very 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 dumb, and the chicken was like snarky. Oh god, then you had like Johnny Test, both fair. Then you had like Johnny Test with the whip cracks. every second. Um, what other shows? I mean, Powerpuff Girls obviously was an absolute banger of a TV show. I, um, oh, I would say though, it's so hard. Destroy, build, destroy from the live action era. There was definitely a live action era. I don't remember watching Destroy, Build, Destroy. I remember things like the Amanda Show. That was one that I watched every now and again. Obviously, watched things like iCarly as well, and Victorious a little bit, but I was starting to move away from like Nickelodeon and stuff around that time. Probably like the first couple of seasons of Victorious. I don't know if you guys heard that crack. Oh, that felt nice. I'll have to maybe someday I can do like a like I should do some tier lists. Those are totally like easy content. I wouldn't have to remember things then. I could just be like, I could just point at the image on the screen and be like, oh, guys, remember that show? Do you remember that one? I hate it. I'm gonna put it in F, and then you all get angry at me, and then I tell you guys, okay, okay, I'll put it up. I'll put it up a little bit, and I put it in C, and we're all happy. That's I just ruined. I just explained every single tier list stream. Okay. Anyway, back to the book. I hope you guys are enjoying this yawning stream with the intermittent reading. I know it's annoying when the reading cuts in a little to your yawnings, but I'm doing my best. You would have written or uttered the same sentence even if your thought had been about the rain. Oh wait, hang on. Oh yeah, yawn ASMR. That's not a bad one actually. It's not a bad one. I wonder how many of you guys are making yawn though. Like, cause I know if I hear someone yawn. Alright. Or if I see someone especially, I'll yawn. Cute yawns. Oh, thank you, Teal. If this is true of the symbols processed by a calculator, it would be true also of the symbols processed by the mind. It would be true, that is to say, of the contents of our thoughts as they are characterized by the CRTT. If your thought that Socrates is a man is identical with the neural process instantiating a sentence in mentalese, which has the meaning or content that Socrates is a man, then that meaning per se plays absolutely no role in causing whatever events the neural process and thus the thought causes. The causal properties of the neural process and slash thought would be just as they are even if it had, instead, the meaning that it is raining, or even if it had no meaning at all. And that entails that the fact that your thought has the content that Socrates is a man plays absolutely no role whatsoever in causing you, for example, to say or write the sentence, Socrates is a man. So essentially, what he is saying is in the same way that without someone to give meaning to the symbols that a calculator produces, if we apply the same kind of concept of a calculator and inputs and outputs and symbols to the brain, you couldn't say that what the brain comes up with, the thoughts in your head, have any meaning. So the fact that, you know, when so his example there is that if you were to write down the words Socrates is a man after thinking those words in your mind, supposedly there wouldn't be any actual role of the thought in your mind, of the sentence in your mind, Socrates is a man, because that doesn't have any meaning on this view to what you just wrote down. You would have written or uttered the same sentence, even if your thought had been about the rain, or even if it had no meaning at all. The electrochemical properties of the neural process implementing the thought are all that matters to its causal efficacy, just as the electronic properties of the symbol in a calculator are all that matter to their causal efficacy. What this seems to mean is that distinctively mental properties turn out in the materialist CRTT to be no less epiphenomenal than they do with property dualism. So for some reason, the brain just creates these thoughts that play no role in the actual mechanistic and deterministic processes of the brain under materialism. Nor is the CRTT the only materialist theory to have this consequence. Indeed, any theory that takes mental states to have whatever causal efficacy they have, only because of their identity with or supervenience upon physical states, seems destined to have the same result. The physical properties of such state end up doing all the causal work, with the mental properties being an irrelevant epiphenomenal extra. Epiphenomenalism will thus appear to threaten materialist theories no less than it does dualist ones, in which case the claims of materialist theories to be better able than dualist ones to account for the causal relations between mind and body seem to dissolve, or at least one of the claims. The problem, however, seems especially poignant for the CRTT, given its claim to provide a materialistic explanation of our capacity for rational thought. If the content or meaning of thoughts has in the CRTT no causal influence on behavior, neither does it have any causal influence on other thoughts. That your thoughts have the content that Socrates is a man, and that all men are mortal, can have no influence whatsoever on producing the thought that Socrates is immortal. For that last thought would have been caused by the others, even if those others had instead had the content that Fido is a dog and all fish have fins, and even if they had no content or meaning at all. The electrochemical properties of the neural processes with which the thoughts are associated are entirely sufficient to bring about whatever effects they do bring about. The meaning or content of the thoughts is irrelevant. So what he's essentially saying here, Fesser, is that under the CRTT, it seems or appears to be that our thoughts have no relations to each other. If thoughts have no inherent meaning in our mentalese or no causal ability, then there's no way that one thought can lead to the next, that I can think true propositions, for instance, that Socrates is a man and all men are mortal, therefore Socrates is mortal. But that's not how it would work under CRTT. It would simply work that whatever the material processes are produce the thought that Socrates are mortal, that Socrates is mortal, as a thought. If those or those physical processes happen to also produce the thoughts, the other two aspects of it, or they could produce anything else, something completely random, that wouldn't matter for the outputs. The result, that this result is as counterintuitive as it is bad enough, but the problem goes deeper. It is only in virtue of the meaning or content of thoughts that they can serve as a rational justification for other thoughts. Your thoughts that Socrates is a man and that all men are mortal are a rational justification for believing that Socrates is mortal, only because they have the meaning they do. They would not serve as a rational justification for the latter thought if they meant instead that Fido is a dog, etc. Yet if the meaning or content of a particular thought plays absolutely no role in bringing about any other thought, it would seem to follow that it can provide no rational justification for any thought. So, no particular thought plays a causal role in bringing about any other one, and so it can't be used as a rational justification, even if it happens to come before that thought. You'd have exactly the same beliefs you have now, whatever the content had been of the further beliefs you appeal to in justifying them. In that case, however, your beliefs would seem to have no rational justification at all. But surely this cannot be right. Surely you do have rational justification for at least many of your beliefs. Yet the CRTT, it seems, cannot account for this. Ironically enough, given that its very rationale was to account for a capacity for rational thought. Even worse, advocates of the CRTT obviously think that they have a rational justification for their own belief in CRTT. But if the theory is correct, it would seem that they can't. The theory appears to undermine itself. I always find it interesting when I'm sure the CRTT have he'll probably go into some of the defenses and the evolution of the ideas, but it's always fun when when philosophers point out how an argument might undermine itself. And I think with these type of things, when it comes to thinking and or change is a good example. If you deny the reality of change or you suggest that everything is changing, there's also often issues that like the very process of either getting to your conclusion or accepting your conclusion makes it impossible to like think or communicate or to accept the conclusion in the first place. It sort of self defeats it. The CRTT defender might appeal to evolution as a guarantee of the reliability of our thought processes. Wouldn't a natural selection ensure that our brains are wired in such a way that the thoughts we generate are, for the most part, true? Wouldn't we have died out long ago if things were otherwise? One quick reply to this would be to suggest that it is begging the question, for it assumes that we can be rationally justified in the CRTT in believing in the Darwinian evolutionary story, or believing anything else in the first place, which is precisely what is at issue. Another reply would be to note that what natural selection tends to maximize is the capacity for an organism to survive and reproduce, and there is no reason to assume that having a true system of beliefs really is the most conducive to survival. Maybe our environment is such that we would have been able to survive and reproduce as well as we have, only because we have developed a mostly false system of beliefs, a kind of elaborate fantasy world that shields us from certain truths, the knowledge of which would tend towards our destruction, perhaps because they would be too horrifying for us to bear. That sounds almost like a oh god, what's that author's name? Everyone knows this. I suddenly can't think. Lovecraftian. That sounds very Lovecraftian. That our minds have and evolution has specifically developed us to hide away, to shy away from these truths that would destroy us. Well, there appears to be an even deeper problem. The general truth or falsity of a system of beliefs can only be affected by natural selection if that system of beliefs has, by virtue of its truths or falsity, some causal influence on behavior. That is, if the truth or falsity per se causes behavior which is either adaptive or maladaptive, and which will tend therefore to either get selected for or selected out by evolution. But a belief's being either true or false is bound up with it having the particular content it has. And as has been suggested, there seems to be no way in the CRTT, or perhaps in any materialistic account of thought, for the content or meaning of a thought to have any causal influence on behavior. The purely neurophysiological properties which, according to the CRTT, instantiate the thought, are the only ones that can have any causal relevance. So there is no way for the truth or falsity of a belief to have any effect on behavior, and thus natural selection cannot affect in any way the general truth or falsity of a system of belief. But in that case, if the CRTT, or any purely materialistic account of thought, is true, evolution cannot account for the reliability of our thought processes. That's That's a really, I'm sure, if you're writing a book, of course, you'll give, hopefully, Fessler is giving, like, the genuine arguments of the individual, such as appealing to evolution. But the fact that he is able to pretty conclusively, if that is what they claim, that evolution, that the selection of supposedly true, that we can accept CRTT because evolution would have chosen true beliefs, just presupposes the causal influence of beliefs, and that CRTT inherently denies this on the face of it, is a great way to basically tell them to shove that argument, essentially. The sort of argument described in this section is sometimes called the argument from reason, and versions of it have been presented by C.S. Lewis, Karl Popper, and most recently, Alvin Plantinga and William Hasker. Wait, am I reading from the... Oh yeah. Insofar as it depends on the chain that materialist theories cannot avoid epiphenomenalism any more than property dualism can. The claim, that is, that materialists cannot solve what philosophers of mind have come to refer to as the problem of mental causation. It rests on a premise that is bound to be controversial, but it shows at the very least the suggestion that our capacity for rational thought is in principle easily explicable in naturalistic terms is far from having been demonstrated. So the argument from reason is basically an argument against materialistic accounts, by arguing that it seems clear that our thoughts cause other thoughts, and that there's some kind of causal thing going on there, or reasons, the thoughts that are reasons for actions in some fashion, but the materialist has to explain that, as well as, of course, the dualist. Now we get on to the Chinese room argument, and again, the reference to the Chinese. It's weird that, like, it's always... I feel like that's the third or fourth Chinese X argument. Many think that this conclusion is bolstered by an important set of arguments associated with John Searle, perhaps the foremost critic of the notion that the human mind ought to be thought of as a kind of software, and the brain as a kind of computer hardware. The first and most famous of these arguments involves a thought experiment that has come to be known as the Chinese room, and is directed at the claim that the implementation of the right sort of program, whether in a computer, a sophisticated robot, or a human being, is sufficient for genuine intelligence. Searle asks us to imagine a scenario in which he is locked in a room with a collection of Chinese symbols and a rulebook, written in English, which tells him which combination of symbols to put together in response to questions written in Chinese, and slipped to him through a slot in the door. Searle doesn't speak a word of Chinese, and the rulebook doesn't tell him the meanings of the symbols he's combining. All it tells him, in effect, is that when he is given a set of symbols that look like this, where this refers to a specific sets of shapes on the page, i.e. inputs, he should reply with a set of symbols that look like that, where that refers to some other set of shapes, and that is essentially our output. It is possible that Searle could get so good at combining the shapes that a native Chinese speaker who is putting questions to him through the slot and is unaware of what is going on would assume that Searle is really Chinese, or really speaks Chinese, I should say. Turing famously suggested that a way of determining whether a suitably programmed machine could be said truly to think would be to put it in a situation where a human being would have to carry on a conversation with both the machine and another human being, and try to determine which participant in the conversation was the machine and which the other human being. If, after a sufficient period of time, the interlocutor couldn't determine which was which, if, that is to say, the machine's performance was indistinguishable from that of the human being, Then, Turing suggested, the machine could be regarded as having exhibited real intelligence. The appropriate way to test for intelligence on this view is to see whether something behaves intelligently, and the machine will have passed what has come to be known as the Turing test. Searle, in his Chinese room, exhibiting behaviors that is indistinguishable from that of a native Chinese speaker, has thereby passed the Turing test for the understanding of Chinese. Moreover, he has done so by doing what a computer program does, namely, manipulate symbols in accordance with an algorithmic procedure to which only the symbol's physical properties, in this case their shape, and not their meaning, are relevant. He is, in effect, running the program for competence in the Chinese language. Yet for all that, he still does not understand a word of Chinese, and has no inkling of what the answers he's giving out means. Perhaps he occasionally hears some yelling on the other side of the door, and wonder whether he's just said something insulting, or he is laughing and wonders whether he's told a joke or committed a faux pas. But then it follows. Searle concludes that running a program, or of whatever level of complexity, cannot suffice for understanding of intelligence. Oh, sorry. But then it follows. Searle concludes that running a program of whatever level of complexity cannot suffice for understanding or intelligence. For if it did suffice, then he would, simply by virtue of running the Chinese language program, would have understood the language. So human intelligence just isn't what the CRTT says it is. It is not the implementation of a kind of computer software. So this is now, rather than kind of pointing out some of the implications of accepting CRTT as an argument, and the issues around that, this is now attacking the very argument itself. Searle considers the possible reply to this argument that even if he doesn't understand Chinese, it doesn't follow that no understanding of Chinese is present. After all, isn't it just a part of the computer, even the central processor, that runs a program? But it isn't just a part of the computer, even the central processor, that runs a program, but the computer as a whole. And Searle is, in the thought experiment, part of a larger system that comprises also the rulebook, symbols, and door slot. It is this entire system which, strictly speaking, runs the Chinese language program. So maybe the system, taken as a whole, understands Chinese, even if one part of it, Searle, does not. This systems reply, as it is known, may sound bizarre. How can a room, even one as eccentric as a Chinese room, be said to understand Chinese? Or anything else for that matter. But if one is willing to take seriously the suggestion that intelligence consists of running of a program in the first place, one is bound to have to swallow some unusual consequences, given the great variety of systems which could, in principle, implement a program. I feel like, maybe you don't necessarily have to argue that the system as a whole understands Chinese. You simply have to have a single area that seems to have some understanding of Chinese, which in this case I suppose would be the rule book. But let's see if that's brought up. Searle argues that the room is not really essential to the thought experiment. We could imagine, instead, that he memorizes the symbols in the rulebook, and responds to questions put to him by quickly recollecting what symbols to give out in response to whatever symbols are put to him. Perhaps he even memorizes the sound of each symbol as well as its shape, and, following the rulebook, can now respond verbally to whatever is said to him by uttering the appropriate sentence of, or sequence of, what to him sounds just like noises. In this scenario, Searle himself just is the entire system, yet he still doesn't understand a word of Chinese. Some have suggested that in this scenario, in which we can suppose Searle interacts directly with other speakers and with the external world, he inevitably would pick up on the meanings of the Chinese words he's uttering. In a certain sequence of sounds, if a certain sequence of sounds tends to be uttered only when it is raining, he is bound to be able to infer that it means it's raining. If another sequence tends to be uttered when cheeseburgers are in the vicinity, you might conclude that it means cheeseburgers, and so forth. Whether such causal interactions with the world would suffice to generate a grasp of meaning is something we'll explore in the next chapter. But as Searle notes, even if such an account is correct, the reply to his argument just sketched essentially concedes its main point, namely, that running a program is, by itself, insufficient for understanding. Thank you, Teal. I actually need to go to a tap to fill up my bottle of water, so I will be back in a moment. I'm back. I do like how you guys can see when I come back by like if I do a little jump. But thank you, Teal, for the hydrate. Lovely. I need to order a new bottle of water. Actually, I said bottle of water before I left, but I actually have a glass next to me. I think I lost my actual bottle of water. I'm so mad. Where were we? Oh yeah. There's a way to argue that in Searle's revised scenario, genuine understanding of Chinese would, for all Searle has shown, exist even in the absence of causal interaction with the world. Consider the fact that computers often run a number of programs simultaneously. For example, you would surf the internet and thus be running your web browser, while also playing a video game and typing a paper with your word processing software. Oh god, how does he know what I do when I'm working sometimes at home? I'm like playing a computer game on my PC and also like, you know, doing my work. yet, yet, though the same machine is running all three programs, none of the programs necessarily have any influence on any of the others. Your word processing has no effect on your score in the game, and your score has no impact on which websites you visit. You might say that none of the programs knows what the other is doing, but maybe something similar is happening with Searle. His conscious understanding of English might be identical to his running a certain program, the program for English competence in this case. There is a second stream of consciousness that is consciously aware of speaking and understanding Chinese, even if the English-speaking program isn't. Since they are different programs, neither has any access of what is going on with the other, any more than your word processor knows what your web browser is up to. But that doesn't mean that each isn't aware of what is going on within itself. The result would be something kind of like multiple personality disorder. By virtue of his running both the English and Chinese speaking programs, more than one mind has taken up residence in Searle's body, though Searle is aware of only of the thoughts of the first. If this is possible, then the fact that Searle's English-speaking stream of consciousness wouldn't be aware of understanding Chinese would nonetheless be consistent with there being some stream of consciousness within him that does understand it. And if that possibility hasn't been ruled out, then the computational picture of the mind hasn't been refuted. Of course, accepting such a thing does seem a little far-fetched, I would say. Other defenders, just a little far-fetched now. Thank you for the head pat. Thank you for the head pat, Teal. It's very nice. Other defenders of the CRTT have suggested that the replies to Searle's arguments, just surveyed, fail to get at its main point. which is that it is really directed at a straw man. Fodor, in particular, has argued that it is a mistake to view the computational representationalist approach to the mind as a theory of understanding in the first place. Advocates of that approach do not hold, or at least need not hold, and should not hold, that it gives an account of meaning or intentionality. It has nothing to say about symbols, Chinese or otherwise. It has nothing to say about how symbols, Chinese or otherwise, come to have any content, or about how we come to understand that content. Rather, it is merely a theory about rationality, about our ability to go from one thought to another in accordance with the laws of logic, and which it holds as we've seen. And what it holds as we've seen is that we are able to do this because our thought processes are computational processes implemented in the hardware of the brain. Nothing in Searle's argument undermines this claim. He is, by virtue of running the Chinese language program, genuinely engaging in rational thought, even if he is unable to understand the contents of the thoughts he's having. Of course, this doesn't show how the CRTT can get around the other objection we've looked at, the argument from reason, but it does show that the Chinese room argument cannot provide compelling, further independent grounds for rejecting the CRTT. Welcome in. Thank you very much for the first time chat. Barbara. Spockon Apacha. Spacha. I have no clue how to even begin to try to pronounce that second name, so I'm just going to call you Barbara. Welcome in. How are you? I hope you're doing well. We're just doing a little bit of reading. But get cozy by the fire, and I hope you enjoy. I think we only have a couple of pages left. Ooh, we actually have a bit more. Okay, we'll keep going. The mind dependence of computation. The Chinese argument seems, at best, inconclusive. But Searle has other arrows in his quiver. The claim of computationalism is that the human mind is identical to a computer program, a piece of software implemented in the mind. The brain, that is to say, on this view, is literally a kind of computer. But by what virtue exactly does something count as a computer in the first place? I'm fine, thanks. How are you? I'm pretty good. I'm a little bit tired. I've been yawning throughout this whole stream, and so people have been getting to hear me do like little high pitched yawns every now and again. I feel we're coming on talking about it. Look at this guy. He's using a skirt. I'm not using a skirt to wet a shush. I'm not using a skirt to wet a shush. You can't hear what I'm saying. What are you talking about? This should be... Do I need to turn up my gain again? What is going on with my gain? Hang on. Let me try something real quick. Okay. Is this a little better? I'm now worried about speaking too loudly because it could be. You sound fine. Oh God, Toeta, you made me turn up my gain when I didn't need to. I'm very iffy about touching the gain monitor because it seems weirdly sensitive. It's like if it gets to... Hang on. Oh God. Why is... There? Okay. I hear him fine now. Excellent. That's good to hear, Toete. It's weirdly sensitive. It's like if I go past a certain point, it starts getting really loud. It might be some kind of some kind of issue that I have maybe in it that I need to try and fix at some point. Hmm. I'm gonna have to play around with it a little bit more. Anyway. Consider the computer sitting at your desk. You use it to surf the internet and do word processing, and part of what this involves is the generation of text and images on the computer screen in response to inputs typed on the keypad. As we've noted earlier, the keys and the words and images appearing on the screen are intrinsically just meaningless patterns, shapes and colors. It is we who give them whatever meaning they have. The same images could, in principle, come into existence accidentally, and have been associated with no meaning whatever. But Searle argues that this is the same thing is true of the electrical impulses produced by the striking of the keys, and of every other electrical impulse or mechanical operation that occurs within the machine, in the course of its carrying out the functions enshrined in the programming. All of these are, intrinsically, just meaningless physical events, and they get their significance as stages in the implementation of a program, only because we take them to have such a significance. But your computer's being a computer at all just consists of its implementing various programs, and its implementing such programs just consists of our taking it to be doing so, of our using it to run the programs. In itself, the machine is nothing more than a hunk of plastic, steel, silicon, and wires, with electrical currents running through it. It counts as a computer, Searle suggests, only relative to us and our interests. Indeed, it is not strictly speaking a computer even then. It is we who literally compute when we use computers. By the same token, it is we who really calculate when we use calculators. The calculator itself is just a mechanical device, and the electrical current running through it. The images displayed on its screen and the markings on its keypad are intrinsically without meaning. We give those things meaning, and we do the calculating, with the device merely being an external aid, vastly different in degree of complexity from an abacus or a pencil and paper, but not relevantly different from them in kind. For this reason, anything could in principle be used as a computer. All that matters is that the system thus used has a structure complex enough for us to be able to interpret its states as being stages in the program. To use an example of Searle's, the atomic structure of the wall of his study is complex enough for there to be some configuration of events taking place within it, at the micro level, that could be interpreted as the implementation of a wood processing program. In a sense, his wall is therefore running word perfect. Hang on, I'm going to have to read that again. I'm very confused at what he just said. To use an example of Searle's, the atomic structure of his wall, the structure of the wall of his study is complex enough for there to be some configuration of events taking place within it, at the micro level, that could be interpreted as the implementation of a word processing program. Okay. In a sense, his wall is therefore running word perfect. Of course, we have no access to that system of micro-level events, so we could never actually find a workable way of isolating one part of a set of events and labeling it the input, or isolating another part and labeling it as the output, and so on. But all that means is that we have no practical use for the wall as a potential word processor, relative to our interests. It doesn't count as one, but in principle it could, and perhaps there might be creatures who would be able to make use of it. And the things that do count as word processors and the like do so only because we find it useful to count them. Computation, Searle concludes, is an observer-relative phenomenon. There is nothing intrinsic to the nature of anything in the material world that makes it a computer, or that makes it true that it is implementing a program. It is all a matter of interpretation, or interpretation. If we decide to count something as a computer, it is one. If not, then it isn't. There is nothing more to it than that. The most complex machine that rolls off the assembly line at IBM will not count as a computer if we have no use for it at all. By contrast, even the pen sitting on your desk in front of you counts as a computer in the trivial sense that we can interpret it as implementing the following program. Lie there and don't move. The problem Searle wants to pose for the computational conception of the mind should now be evident. If computation is observer relative, then that means that its existence presupposes the existence of observers, and thus the existence of minds. So obviously, it cannot be appealed to in order to explain observers or minds themselves. That would be to put the cart before the horse. It would be trying to explain someone's appearance by appealing to a painting of her. See, the painting looks like this, so that must be why she does too. Obviously, in this case, things are in reality the other way around. The paintings look the way it does is to be explained in terms of the appearance of the person it is a painting of. By the same token, it is the computation that must get explained in terms of the human mind, not the human mind in terms of computation. The brain is not intrinsically a digital computer, because nothing is. The mind's ability to think in accordance with the laws of logic cannot be explained in terms of the brain's running a certain kind of program. The computational representational theory of thought thus seems incoherent. Another way to see the point is to recall that a computational account regards the mental processes as the implementation of a set of algorithms. To implement an algorithm is to follow a set of explicit rules. As Herbert Dreyfus, another influential critic of computationalism, has pointed out, an apparent problem with the view that a mind can be explained entirely in terms of following a set of some basic set of algorithmic rules is that any set of rules is capable of a variety of interpretations. It is possible to fix the interpretation of a given set of rules by appealing to a set of higher order rules, but this just pushes the problem back a stage, since these higher order rules are themselves going to be susceptible to various interpretations. So another way to understand Searle's argument is as follows. The fact that a computer is following some basic set of algorithmic rules cannot fully account for its behavior, because that the set of rules, and thereby its behavior, is to be understood in this way rather than that, requires some interpretation to be put on those basic rules. And since there is, by definition, no more basic set to appeal to in order to fix the interpretation, we need to appeal to something outside the computer, a mind that interprets the rules. In that case, we cannot explain the mind itself in terms of the following of algorithmic rules, for that such rules are to be given this interpretation, rather than that, presupposes the existence of a mind. Indeed, strictly speaking, that they truly count as rules at all, presupposes that there is a mind interpreting them as rules. Otherwise, all that is present are regularities of behavior that can be described as if they amounted to the following of rules. Some have tried to reply to Searle's argument by noting that, strictly speaking, more is required of something if it is to count as a computer than merely that we could interpret some isolated set of its states as a computation. It is not enough, for example, for a system plausibly to count as implementing the computation 1 plus 2 equals 3, that it has states that correspond to 1 and 2, which are followed by a state that corresponds to 3. For what it does genuinely to count as addition, it must also be true that For what it does genuinely to count as addition, it must also be true had we instead counted the first two states as 3 and 4, and the third state would have counted as 7, and so on for the other counterfactual inputs and outputs. But this does not seem to undermine Searle's basic point. All it shows is that a system is only going to be useful to us as a computer or a calculator if it is complex enough to mirror all the possible computations we might want to perform with it, and not just some limited range. But this does not at all show that computation is not observer relative. We couldn't make a knife out of just anything. Steel and plastic will do. but shaving cream and butter won't. But that doesn't undermine the point that something counts as a knife only relative to our interests. Not everything can effectively be used to express a word or sentence. Ink marks and sounds will do, but cigarette smoke trails and water droplets are too formless and unstable. But that doesn't affect the point that a given physical object only counts as a word or sentence if we use it as a word or sentence. Similarly, a machine has to have a certain level of complexity if it is going to be useful to us as a word processor or calculator. But that doesn't change the fact that its being a word processor or calculator is ultimately a mind-dependent phenomenon. These last examples indicate that if Searle is right, his argument would apply not only to the computational part of CRTT, but also to the representational part of it. The CRTT, as we have seen, holds that we think of a language of thought, where this language is realized in sentences, somehow instantiated in the neural wiring of the brain. But as we have seen, physical shapes, patterns or sounds, electrical impulses and the like, by themselves, have no meaning. And the point is not merely that the word cat does not refer to cats apart from our taking it to refer. It doesn't even count as a word in the first place. Whatever we take to refer to, unless we so count it. But the same is true of sentences. Nothing is intrinsically a sentence. Something's status as a sentence is entirely relative to our using it as one. In itself, a sentence is just a string of marks on paper, a series of noise or whatever. And this seems to be no less true of neural wiring patterns, as one set of physical phenomena among others. They appear to have no intrinsic meaning or status as sentences, any more than do ink marks or sound waves. Well, in the case, there cannot literally be sentences in our head unless we interpret some neural processes occurring there as being instances of certain sentences, something which, quite obviously, happens only extremely rarely, if ever. More to the point, if sentences too are observer relative, then they cannot be appealed to in an explanation of the mind and its thoughts. If one accepts the basic thrust of Searle's position, then the representational part of the CRTT seems just as incoherent as the conceptual aspect. Let me just see how long this last bit is. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it's about 4.5 pages. It'll take a little bit to read that, I think. Let me take a drink of water. Here we go. Now finally, there is arguably a problem with the claim of the language of thought hypothesis, that the thoughts of which have that language as their medium are never brought to consciousness. A claim that the theory must make, seeing as we are never aware of thinking in any such language, but only in the natural languages, English, German, French, we use to speak. Searle argues that there can, in principle, be no such thing as an entity which is both literally a thought and totally unconscious. This is the connection principle alluded to in the previous chapter, in which there is an inherent connection between some things being a thought and its being conscious. If this principle is true, it would seem to follow that there is yet another reason to regard the language of thought hypothesis, and the CRTT of which it forms a part, as incoherent. Excuse me. I'm quite eepy. I'm quite sleepy. Okay. Only a little bit to go. Searle's argument for this principle brings into sharper focus the deep connections that, as we have suggested in the previous chapter, seem to hold between consciousness, subjectivity, and intentionality. Boiled down to its essence, it goes like this. Unconscious mental states, such as one's unconscious belief that water quenches thirst, have intentionality. In this case, the belief represents, is directed at, or is about the fact of water's being thirst quenching. But as with all intentional states, such unconscious states have aspectual shape, in that they represent whatever it is they represent in some particular aspects rather than others. In the case at hand, the belief represents the fact in question as the fact that water is a thirst quencher, and not necessarily as the fact that H2O is a thirst quencher. For some people who have... For the person who has the belief may know nothing about H2O, and thus not know that water equals H2O. But aspectual shape is not something that can in principle be analysed in exclusively objective third-person neurophysiological and behavioural terms. If we observe someone going to a spigot and turning it, there is nothing about this behaviour by itself that determines conclusively that the person is seeking water rather than H2O, for the behaviour might be the same either way. Even asking him which one he is seeking wouldn't be enough, because saying, "I'm seeking water and not H2O," won't by itself tell you whether what the person means by the sound water and H2O is the same as what you mean by those words. And asking what the person does mean will just raise the same problem at another level. What does the person mean by these other words, sounds, which are made in order to explain what is meant by the first ones? The upshot, Searle concludes, is that it is only from the first-person point of view of the subjective experiences of the person having the belief, the meaning of the person's words can be conclusively determined. It is important to note that Searle's claim isn't merely that we can know for certain from the external... My throat is getting a little tight. I think I was... Because I was... As I said earlier, I accidentally started a stream where I like sang a song, but I was doing some like singing practice earlier, so I think my throat is just a little bit at me today. The upshot, Searle concludes, is that it is only from the first-person point of view of the subjective experience of the person having the belief the meaning of the person's words can be conclusively determined. It is important to note that Searle's claim isn't merely that we can't know for certain, from the external objective point of view, what the meaning of the words is, but rather that there would be no fact of the matter at all what those words mean, if the only evidence that existed was the external third-person point of view evidence alone. Here Searle appeals to a famous set of arguments given by the philosopher W.V.O. Quine, 1908 to 2000. Wow, he lived up to 92 years of age. For what Quine called the indeterminacy of translation. Quine argued that an anthropologist who notes that a member of a previously unknown tribe constantly uses the expression gavagi in the presence of rabbits might naturally interpret the expression as meaning rabbit, and go on to translate the rest of the speaker's language accordingly. But it is also possible, going by the speaker's behavior alone, that the expression could be translated instead as undetached rabbit pelt, or temporal stage of a rabbit. Assuming that the speaker's language reflects, unlike our own, a special interest in body parts that remain attached to the body, or in objects of ordinary experience considered as mere temporal stages of larger four-dimensional space-time structures. That is the entire history of the rabbit from conception to death. And that the rest of the speaker's language could be translated in light of these unusual assumptions. There is nothing in the speaker's behavior alone that could possibly favor one system of translation over the other. Quine argues, provided that each system of translation was thorough enough to account for all the speaker's behavior, Oh wait, hang on. I read that wrong. My apologies. There is nothing in the speaker's behavior alone that could possibly favor one system of translation over the other, Quine argues, provided that each system of translation was thorough enough to account for all of the speaker's behavior. Quine, who was a kind of behaviorist, he held that there is nothing to the mind over and above patterns of behavior, took this to have the startling consequence that there is in no fact of the matter, period, about what any of us mean whenever we utter any expression, whether we decide to regard others or even ourselves as meaning rabbit or temporal stage of a rabbit, when we talk about rabbits, is entirely a pragmatic affair, a matter of which translation we find more useful. Neither interpretation is objectively close to the truth than the other, for there is no objective truth of the matter in this case. Cyril rejects this view utterly. There is, he insists, clearly more to the mind than behavior. There is also the subjective first-person point of view of the conscious subject, and from this point of view a person does know that, as a matter of fact, it is, say, rabbit that he means, and not unattached pelt of a rabbit. But Cyril does not agree with Quine that if third-person behavioral and neurophysiological evidence were all we had to go on, there wouldn't be such a fact of the matter. The third-person external evidence just isn't by itself enough to determine meaning, or in particular to determine aspectual shape. If third-person facts are not enough to determine aspectual shape, they are not also enough to determine the content of an intentional mental state, like a belief that water quenches thirst. But when a person has such a state, unconsciously, such objective third-person facts about neural connections in the brain, about behavioral disposition and the like, are all the relevant facts there are. So, strictly speaking, when he or she is not consciously aware of believing that water quenches thirst, he or she does not, in Cyril's view, have that belief. But there is obviously a sense in which one has that belief even when one isn't conscious of it, isn't there? There is, Cyril agrees. But what this amounts to is really just this. When someone isn't consciously entertaining their belief, what he or she has is a set of neural connections that have a tendency under certain circumstances to produce the conscious belief that water quenches thirst. Until the person is conscious of it, though, he or she doesn't literally have a mental state, having the content that water quenches thirst. The person couldn't have it, given the inherent connection between the conscious, subjective first-person point of view of the subject and the aspectual shape exhibited by all mental states involving intentionality. If there is such an inherent connection, there just couldn't be states which were literally mental and literally had intentionality, and yet were always in principle unconscious. That is, there couldn't be states of the sort of language of thought hypothesis postulates, beliefs, desires, and so on, formulated in mental ease. In Cyril's view, if we are never conscious of such thoughts, we never really have them at all. The defender of the CRTT could reply by suggesting that perhaps what we meant by rabbit, and what we mean by anything else for that matter, really isn't as determinate from the first-person point of view as Cyril thinks. Maybe you don't really know, even via introspection, precisely what you mean when you use rabbit or any other expression. And if not, there would be no reason to accept Cyril's suggestion that an appeal to the subjective first-person perspective of consciousness is necessary to account for the determinate meaning of our thoughts and expressions, for they just wouldn't have any determined meaning in the first place. That would, to say at least, seem to be a rather extreme and counterintuitive way to avoid Cyril's conclusion. It appears to entail that there is no fact to the matter about whether you mean rabbit or temporal stage of a rabbit, and it brings us at long last to the issue of whether materialism can account for what seems to be the obvious fact about meaning or intentionality. The arguments considered in the previous chapter led us to conclude that this is ultimately the key question the materialist has to face. The arguments of this chapter have reinforced this conclusion. The arguments from reason implies the standard materialist attempt to explain human rationality fails to account for the effect intentional mental states, qua intentional, have on the physical world, and Searle's various arguments suggest that the categories these materialist theorists appeal to, computation, representation, language and its elements, for example sentences, presuppose intentionality and the point of view of the conscious subject, and thus cannot form the basis for a theory explaining the rational intentional processes of the subject. The last of his arguments has also reinforced the previous chapter's suggestion that there is an inherent link between consciousness, intentionality, and subjectivity, and that one cannot account for one of these without accounting for the others. We will consider whether this argument is ultimately defensible as we focus on intentionality itself in the next chapter. And that is the end of that chapter, which would bring us to chapter 7, intentionality. I'm very tired, I'm not gonna lie. I was sort of on autopilot for that last section. Could have hit me in the last half an hour. I've kind of just been rolling through as best I can. And I think what that tells me is I need to go take a nap. I need to go eat. So we will look for someone to raid, I think. Ooh. Who is live? Ooh, I know who will raid. Thank you for joining, D, and thank you for joining everyone else who's still around. We're gonna raid my friend Cat's Returns. She recently got her new model about a week ago. Well, she got it ages ago, but she's only kind of been streaming properly with it. She's very cool, so be sure to treat her well. Let me Cat's Returns. Okay, let's start right. But thank you all for joining me as always. I'm going to try and do something that's not reading tomorrow and probably Sunday if I have time. But I need to go sleep. I'm gonna go listen to some ASMR. I'm gonna go brush my teeth like Dent Van says, and then I'm gonna go to bed. But thank you guys. Gurad Nila Makut, Slong Foil. I'll see you guys soon.